An anniversary to remember. Passing the two guards keeping watch outside the royal quarters, Shining closed the heavy oak door as quietly as he could behind him, wincing as the door shut with a resounding click. He quietly cursed whoever was responsible for installing such a loud door. It was well past 3 in the morning, and he was now regretting spending the whole night with his drinking buddies in the Crystal Guard. Ever since he had gotten married to his beautiful and loving wife a year ago, he almost never got the chance to go out because of his new royal duties. So he jumped at every opportunity to go out when he could. Trying to walk as quietly as he could, he gingerly placed each hoof on the marble floor as gently as possible. Every step echoed throughout the large room, and he could only pray that Cadence wouldn't wake up, even though she wasn't a light sleeper. He wanted to take every precaution he could to remain undetected. Using his memory of the floor plan alone, he navigated his way through the pitch black rooms to his shared bedroom. Just as he was about to turn the final corner, he bumped into an end table, making one of the many priceless porcelain vases that had wobbled in place loudly. Grabbing it quickly, Shining stopped it from falling with an outstretched hoof. He quietly righted it and held it in place for a couple of seconds, making sure that it wouldn't tip over when he let go. Releasing the precious vase, he gave the end table a wide berth as he rounded the corner. Walking down the final hallway that led towards the royal suite, he saw a sliver of light creeping out from underneath the closed door. Hoping his mind was playing tricks on him, he closed his eyes. Please let me be seeing things. Please, let me be seeing things. Just let me be seeing things, he desperately thought. After waiting a couple of seconds, he reopened them. Directing his gaze towards the bottom of the door, he saw that damp sliver of light still shining under it. Face hoofing, he groaned inwardly as he figured that Cadence was surely up, waiting for him. Damn it all to hell, he thought as he stomped the hoof angrily, cringing as it hit the floor loudly. He had just wanted to sneak back inside their bedroom, crawl under the covers, and act like everything was normal. But it was pretty apparent that that wasn't going to happen. What can I say? What can I say? He brought a hoof to his chin as he struggled to come up with a believable excuse. I had to deal with troop reassignment for the last several hours? No, that won't work. There's no way she'll believe that. What about... No, that won't work either. As he stood there in front of his closed bedroom door, he got an inkling of a feeling that he had forgotten something really important. But he just couldn't place a hoof on it. He cocked his head from side to side, and then it suddenly hit him like a freight train speeding out of control. Oh, horse apples! Oh, our 1-year anniversary was today! Earlier that day, he had told Cadence that he was going to take her out to the finest restaurant in all of the Crystal Empire to celebrate their anniversary. After getting a really happy kiss from her, he had left to conduct troop inspections that had taken the whole day. As he dismissed them, several of his friends came up and asked him to go out with them. Knowing that he only had a couple of hours until he and Cadence would go out for their special night, he had nervously agreed, saying that he was just going to have 1 beer and then call it quits. He had gone down to the local bars with them, but he didn't have just 1 beer. Oh no, he had quite a lot more than 1 beer, and quickly got lost in the moment, forgetting his anniversary date with Cadence. Little did he know, after waiting for an hour past the time he had said he would be back, Cadence had gone down to her husband's office, only to have the sole remaining pony there tell her that Shining had gone out drinking with several members of the guard over an hour ago. She had gone back to their room fuming. She ripped off the fine dress that she had been wearing, and she lay on the bed, feeling gloomy. She couldn't fathom why Shining, her faithful husband, had stood her up like that. It wasn't like him at all. But after several minutes of hard thinking, a tantalizing idea had popped into her mind, and she had gone off to the storeroom to gather supplies to prepare a little surprise for him. Gritting his teeth nervously, he decided to bite the bit and hope for the best. He placed his hoof on the bedroom door and pushed it open, making the hinges creak quite loudly, a lot more so than before. As the door slowly swung open, he was stopped in his tracks by what he saw. Their bedroom was completely different. Gone were the normal lamps that lit the room in a warm, comforting glow. In their place stood many candles, spread out evenly across the edges of the room. Their light cast an eerie glow on the room's only occupant. As Shining's gaze fell on his wife, his gaze was immediately drawn to her peculiar outfit. Her normal royal regalia had disappeared, replaced with tight black latex leggings that went nearly all the way up her beautiful pink legs and wrapped snugly around her lovely thighs. The alicorn lay strewn across the bed, looking up from a book facing him. The locks of her vibrant, well-brushed mane fell in a flowing trail down her soft coat to the top of her flank, which bore her sensitive cutie mark. She batted her long eyelashes once at his appearance, and then her purple eyes reappeared to glare at him. She closed her book, and he had a split second to read the title, Her Warrior Slave. Setting it down on the nightstand beside her with her magic, she crossed her forehooves and just stared at her husband with a cold look on her face, silently letting him know that he had fucked up. "Where have you been?" Cadence asked slowly, in an even tone, completely devoid of any emotion. The princess delicately lifted her legs and herself fluidly off of the bed. Her hooves hit the ground with a short-lived clatter. They weren't heavy, but their ladylike force caused Shining to jump. Her eyes were affixed on his, cold and hard gems of pink diamond glaring into his own with an unwavering stare. Shining had certainly seen his wife angry before, but not like this. It was nearly like he was staring into the face of a commanding ruler. Indeed, this ruler stared at her subject, a naughty colt that needed the sting of a hoof across his rear to whip him back in line. The alicorn almost smiled at his premonition. Everything was in place for just that sort of royal treatment. Shining was at a loss for word, his mind going blank. He struggled to come up with a proper response. Moments later, though, Cadence was standing nose to nose in front of him, staring deep into his eyes, ready to pronounce judgment. Breaking the silence, Cadence asked, "Why are you coming back so late, dear?" She cocked her head to the side as she waited for his answers. I just, you know." Shining stuttered with a nervous laugh, rubbing the back of his head with a hoof as he tried to figure out what to say. "No, I don't know, Shining. Where have you been?" When he didn't respond, she continued in an accusatorial manner. "Weren't you supposed to take me somewhere tonight?" Yeah, but I kinda, forgot." "Oh, you forgot?" she asked abruptly, slightly raising her voice. "Instead of taking me out to that nice restaurant we talked about this morning, you decided to go out and drink with your buddies instead, right?" Her voice shook, laced with jagged hurt and restrained fury. "Cadence, I have no idea how I felt about our anniversary dinner. I'm sorry. Sorry isn't gonna cut it tonight, Shining." She trailed off dramatically as she cast her gaze to the side, feigning feelings of betrayal. "How could you?" "Caddy, please. Is there anything I can do to make it up for you? I'll do anything, I swear," Shining said vehemently, stomping his hoof on the ground for emphasis. "Anything?" Cadence asked, perking up slightly. She glanced at her husband, who was nodding fervently. "Yes, anything. I feel terrible about messing up our night. I really, really want to make it up to you." He gave her a nuzzle just under the cheek, right where she liked it. Looking back into her eyes, He raised a hoof to her chin and firmly said, "Anything." "Well, there is this one thing." Cadence trailed off mysteriously as she blushed a light rose, never breaking eye contact. "What?" "Well, what do you do when one of your soldiers step out of line?" Cadence asked in a slightly menacing tone. She walked back towards the bed, flicking her tail sexily as her hips swayed from side to side. Shining caught on instantly. Her tail had barely moved out of the way to grace him with a tantalizing view of her slit. This familiar action immediately tipped him off, and he easily discovered her intention. With a grin, Shining raised a hoof to step forward, but stopped when his wife's eyes met his. They were full of confidence of the incoming pleasure, tempered with a warning for him to mind himself. "I asked you a question, Shining." Cadence's voice was firm and demanding. They will be reprimanded," Shining said nervously, making his usually strong voice tremble. "Well, they would be disciplined," Shining said. "Exactly," Cadence said with a devilish smile as she glanced back at Shining. Looking forward again, she forcefully yanked the heavy wooden chest out from under the bed with her magic. Twisting it so that her husband couldn't see what was inside, she unlocked it and tossed the lid open, leaving Shining wondering what the mysterious chest held. Her heartbeat quickened with glee. After all this time, he had finally given her an excuse to bring this out of its hiding place and use these special toys of hers. "And now, I'm going to discipline you." "Wait a second, what are you talking about?" Shining asked as he stepped forward, his brow furrowed in worry. When Cadence didn't respond, he was just about to ask again when his horn was suddenly struck with a familiar, soothing sensation. He looked back towards his wife and saw that her horn was lit. No doubt, she was casting one of her infamous love spells on him. Closing his eyes, he smiled as he felt Cadence's familiar presence in his mind. As his mind connected with the one who he knew inside and out, all of his worries and fears were gently washed away. His wife's magic worked over him, leaving him with the feelings of love, happiness, and excitement. However, just as she was closing their special connection, he picked up on small traces of anger and resentment, leaving him a little confused. As Cadence's horn dimmed a few seconds later, he slowly opened his eyes. Looking back at his wife, he decided to play along with her little game. Smiling, he said in a sweet and loving voice, "Cadence, have I told you how much I love you?" "Oh, countless times, love." Cadence grinned as her plan slowly came to fruition. "Alright, I'm going to lay down the rules. Rule number 1. From this point onward, you are only to refer to me as Mistress or Mistress Cadence. Any deviation from this will result in punishment. Do you understand?" She asked evenly as she rummaged through her chest, gathering all the necessary equipment. Yeah?" Shining asked a little unsure. He hated being left out in the dark. He always had to know what was going on. Several unsettling memories of his time in the field crept up on him. She wasn't giving him much intelligence now, and he knew from his experience in the military that was a recipe for disaster, a fact which was now putting him on edge. "What was that, slave?" Cadence asked darkly as her head shot up, staring right at the unicorn, making him tremble. She thought for the briefest of seconds that maybe her spell didn't work, but she quickly tossed the idea out of the window. Yes, mistress?" Shining tried, hoping that he wouldn't find out what his wife meant by punishment. He had never seen this side of Cadence before, and he wasn't quite sure if he liked it or not. He was always the dominant one in their sex life, and he had always assumed that his wife loved being the submissive one. Until now. "That's better," Cadence spat out as she lit her horn. "Now turn around." She waited until Shining quietly obeyed, and then she pulled out a few select accessories and bondage instruments, laying them all on the bed, out of Shining's view. Grabbing the perfect punishment instrument, which also happened to be one of her favorite toys, she silently twirled the black whip in the air. She liked this one the best for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, it was light, which meant that she could swing it as effortlessly and as fast as she wanted. Secondly, it had a single false leather strap at the tip, giving her the option of bestowing a gentle kiss or delivering a painful whip. Grabbing a blindfold, she quietly walked over to where her husband stood and said sultrily, "Rule number 2. Do not speak unless spoken to. If you speak out of turn, you'll be punished." Using her magic, she took a moment to lower the thick leg of black cloth over Shining's eyes, quickly tying it tightly behind his head. She knew that he was going to object to having his sight taken from him. "Cadence, what the hey?" He was suddenly cut off when something suddenly whipped him on his flank, making him flinch. "Ow! What was that?" Cadence whipped him again, this time on the opposite flank. "Hey, stop that!" Cadence whipped him again. "Any more objections?" Cadence asked mockingly. When her sub didn't respond, she twirled the whip in the air, letting it swish about every which way lazily. Good. You're learning, slave," she said as she lightly massaged his QE mark. As she started walking around her sub, she continued, "Alright, rule number 3. You must do everything I order you to without question. More so, if I ask you a question, I expect an answer. Got it, slave?" Shining only responded by nodding, which made his new mistress whip him again for not responding. "I asked you a question, slave," Cadence hissed, delivering another painful blow to Shining's flank. At this point, his flanks were glowing a slight pink from her ministrations. Yes, mistress," Shining replied quickly, praying that her assault on his rear would stop, and thankfully, it did. As his hind leg started to tremble, he felt his sheath length start to twitch. He had no idea how, but somehow he was being turned on by his dominating wife. She was taking control of him, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do to stop it. He stood in place silently, nervous yet somewhat excited for what she had in store for him. Rule number 4. Under no circumstances are you to touch yourself. Only I can bestow pleasure upon you. Cadence tightened the loose ends of her sub's blindfold, making sure that it was secure on his head. She didn't want it to fall off from being too loose. Looking back to the bed, she quickly found the next bondage instrument that she needed, a spreader bar. Grabbing it with her magic, she levitated it beside her, and then she ordered, "Slave, spread your hind legs." Shining hesitated, but complied when he felt the whip's stinging kiss graze his sensitive inner thighs. He spread his hind legs as ordered, unconsciously keeping his tail pinned in between his legs. "His tail's gonna be an issue, but that's fine. I have just the thing to take care of it," Cadence thought to herself with a sly grin. Affixing the first cuff near the bottom of Shining's left hind leg, she secured it with a small heart-shaped lock. She gently guided his remaining leg into the other cuff and locked it in with an identical lock. "That's a good slave," Cadence cooed sweetly, putting just the right amount of dark and sexy undertones in her voice. "Now I want you to push your front hooves out in front of you." As Shining did exactly that, she grabbed the next bondage instrument from the bed with her magic. This time, it was a black latex bag designed solely to bind hooves together. As Shining pushed his hooves out in front of him as ordered, he quickly realized that he was being put in the most vulnerable position possible. To comply with his mistress's orders, he had to lean down, which made him push his hips further into the air. Just knowing that he was standing in one of the most lewd positions made his stallionhood start to grow. As his hind legs started trembling from the strain of standing in such an awkward position, he tried to shift into a more comfortable position, but it was useless. This new stance prevented him from doing just that. His now fully erect cock stood at attention, bouncing against the spreader bar that held his hind legs apart. The cold metal contrasted nicely with his warm, sensitive length, only furthering his arousal. Just as her sub settled into his new position, Cadence quickly slipped the black latex over his outstretched hooves, using her magic to quickly tighten the material, binding his hooves together. But she wasn't done yet. Don't you dare move a muscle. You don't want to know what will happen if you disobey your mistress, Cadence said darkly as she went back to the bed, picking out one of the last few remaining instruments at her disposal for the night. Picking up a collar and the length of fox leather that was attached to it, she silently walked back over to where her sub was. She opened the clasps on the collar and secured it around her slave's trembling neck. Tightening it, she picked up the cord of fox leather hanging from the rear and tied it near the base of his tail, pulling it up and away from his rear. Adjusting the length of the cord with her magic, she made it smaller and smaller until Shining's head was being pulled up and his tail was hanging over his back, revealing his tight, virgin plot hole. Shining felt completely helpless. His privates were completely exposed, and he was bound so securely that he couldn't move an inch. He was sure that if he tried, he would be punished much more severely than a few whips on his flanks. His now fully erect dick was dripping with small droplets of pre-cum, which got all over the spreader bar and the floor. Cadence sat back for a moment to assess her handiwork. Her husband was completely bound from head to flank, and she'll be damned if she said that this wasn't turning her on right now. Well, he did say anything, she thought to herself, giggling inwardly. Choosing to let Shining wonder what was going to happen to him next, she sat silently, waiting for him to give her an opportunity to punish him. But even after a few minutes passed, the shivering unicorn remained obediently silent. Seems like he caught on. What a good slave. So with a smile, Cadence got up from her position and silently sat down in front of Shining without him knowing. Deciding to give him a little shock, she gave a quick nip on the ear, and then she sultrily whispered, "A really good little slave. I think you deserve a reward." She slid closer to him, eliciting an unintentional moan from her as his hot breath flowed over her engorged slit. "Now, you have 1 minute to make me come." Shining's eyes went wide under his blindfold at the absurd order. He hesitated for the briefest of seconds, and that delay was just long enough for him to earn another whip across his flank, this one right next to his sensitive cutie mark. Why the hesitation? Being able to please your mistress is the highest of rewards, slave. Also, if you do a good job, your mistress might feel inclined to please you. Cadence moaned softly, twirling her whip in the air. She contemplated whipping him for disobeying her order, but decided against it just this once. "And if you disobey me once more, your punishment will be much more severe than a few whippings. Understood?" "Yes." "Yes, what?" Cadence snarled as she yanked Shining's head back roughly, swishing her whip menacingly in the air next to his exposed ear. Yes, Mistress Cadence." Shining responded as he quickly realized his mistake. He closed his eyes and braced himself for another series of whippings, but they never came. "I gave you an order, slave. What are you waiting for? Do you want to be punished more?" Cadence yelled, lifting the whip in her magical grasp to deliver another blow. "Service me, or you will be punished severely." She roughly shoved her hips forward, pushing Shining's muzzle into her slit, leaving him barely enough room to breathe. Yes, mistress." Shining mumbled into her dripping folds. His tongue immediately went to work, licking fervently at his mistress's folds, which were already dripping with the fragrant juices of excitement. Seeking to please the alicorn, he lapped around her vulva, pressed hard against his muzzle. Cadence thrust it more forcefully against his mouth as his wet tongue writhed around her sopping entrance. He moved upward to find and tease her clit, and then pleasured the love button with powerful strokes of his tongue. Cadence let out the softest of moans, just barely audible to him and obviously concealed until just now to withhold any satisfaction to him. Yet this sign let him know his mistress was pleased, so he knew it was safe to prod into her, inching inside her pussy. Pushing his tongue as deep inside as he could, he moved his tongue every which way, licking as fast and as desperately as he could. He worked eagerly to please as much of her tight marehood as he could, soon allowing him to taste the fruits of his labor when his mistress's love juices began flowing. He obediently began to swallow all of her sweet nectar, but her desire was producing a nice flow, and a few drops sneaked into his nose. His airflow was suddenly cut off, and he sputtered, trying to regain control. He pulled his head back instinctively to try and get a hold of himself, but the instant he did, he knew he fucked up. As Cadence's arousal started to slip away, she snarled menacingly. "Did I order you to stop, slave?" Mistress, I'm sorry. Your juices got my nose. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't help it, honest," Shining said as he tried to look up at his mistress. As her slave started stammering his apologies, she stood up from her position on the floor. Disappointment and anger flowed through her as she considered what she had lost. Her folds were positively dripping with her love juices from her slave's experienced ministrations, and if she had given him a few more minutes, she would have had came all over his pretty little face. Just the thought of seeing her sub soaked in her cum made her shiver in excitement, which made her pussy leak and make a trail of love juices down her inner thighs. With the warm liquid traveling down her legs, she spoke with her lips inches from his ears. Shining's spine tingled with fear and excitement when her cold and sadistic voice tickled his ear with a message indicating her control over him. "Don't you move a muscle. I'll be back with your punishment shortly." She quietly walked towards the bed and went back to the wooden trunk again. Throwing open the lid, she surveyed her options. There were various types of ball gags, ropes, and other restraints on the far left, but those were not the objects of her present interest. Yet, in the other side lay instruments of more striking appeal that immediately satisfied the demands of her search. Tools that stretched and penetrated and wiggled, and the effect of each was determined by her will alone, so that she could control if they brought her slave pleasure or pain. With a dark grin, she surveyed each of the toy, remembering bemusedly how she had especially selected every one, each for its own unique and specialized purpose. She even had to restrain herself from stroking at her sopping entrance as she looked for just the right one to fit her desire, at a hoof for the right punishment of her naughty, disobedient slave. Meanwhile, Shining was hoping against hope that his punishment wasn't going to be too severe. Messing up a response was one thing, but failing to please his mistress? He shuddered as several scary possibilities flowed through his mind, each less tasteful than the last. Twitching his ears back towards the bed, he tried his hardest to guess what his mistress had in mind for him. After listening intently for several seconds with no results, he gave up. His hind legs were burning from standing for so long, and his muscles were on fire. "Are you ready for your punishment, slave?" Cadence asked slowly from her position near the bed. She had picked up a few choice toys and a special tool from her chest, and as she levitated them in the air, she also grabbed a small bottle of silicone lube, having refused to use any other kind because of its ability to far outlast other kinds. The special toy was a lube applicator, something that she used quite frequently when she was alone. The first toy was a butt plug with a series of large bumps along one side, perfect for stimulating the prostate. The second one was a strap-on that was about 3/4 of the thickness of Shining's stallion hood, and the third was an even larger double dildo, slightly bigger than Shining's length. This third one was her prized toy, the one she had always wanted to use. She had always wished that she had someone to share it with, but she had always been afraid of what Shining would think of her kinkier side. But now things had changed, and she was about to get her wish. "You like this, don't you, slave? You like being tied up and left to my mercy?" Cadence asked, giving her sub's flank a quick rub. "Yes, mistress, I love being your toy," Shining replied automatically. "Wait, did I really just say that?" Good. Cadence cooed as she tenderly rubbed her sub's flanks, setting all 3 toys and the lube down beside her. "Now, I'm going to show you what it truly means to serve your mistress." Picking up the first of the 3 toys, the butt plug, she applied a more than generous amount of lube to its black rubbery surface. Satisfied that it was more than ready, she set it down and picked up the lube applicator. She dipped it into the bottle of lube and pulled a good measure of the slippery liquid into the syringe. Screwing the lid back onto the bottle of lube, she set it aside for later. With a naughty grin, she levitated the small, rounded tip to Shining's virgin plot hole and used the plunger to push a small amount of the lube onto it, coating his entrance in the cold, slippery fluid. Seeing his plot hole tense up, she said incredulously, "Slave? I could have sworn you just said you wanted this. Were you lying to your mistress?" "No, mistress, I... Yet again, Shining was at a loss for words. "If you want some advice from a pro, relax. This will go much more easier on you if you don't find it. Do you understand, slave?" Cadence asked as she kept the lube applicator pressed up against her sub's quivering plot hole. "Yes, mistress," Shining whispered, his voice barely audible. This was outside his comfort zone, but there was little he could do. Taking a couple of deep breaths, he made his sphincter relax, and with a small gasp, the lube applicator slipped inside a couple inches. Much to his surprise, through the small amount of pain he also felt a small amount of pleasure. A couple of seconds later, he felt the cold contents of the syringe injected inside, coating his insides in the super slick liquid. An unintentional groan slipped from his mouth, surprising both him and his mistress. "Ooh, is someone enjoying this?" Cadence asked, feigning shock and anger. No, mistress," Shining stammered, lying through his fucking teeth. "I don't deserve to feel pleasure." "That's right, slave," Cadence moaned as she laid the lube applicator right next to the bottle of lube. "You're being punished." She grabbed the butt plug sitting beside her and lined it up with her sub's quivering plot hole. Applying just a little pressure, she started to push the toy inside her sub's tight plot hole. She twisted it back and forth, letting the smooth, rounded tip part his rear entrance gently. Pulling the toy away, she got a brief glimpse of Shining's insides before she put it back at his little hole. Pushing again with more pressure this time, the tip and the first bulge slid inside her slave's rear. Groaning from both pleasure and the brief flash of pain from having his virgin plot hole being stretched for the first time, Shining fidgeted as much as his bindings would allow. His flanks twitched in response to his mistress's treatment, and as he felt her twist the toy around trying to loosen up his rear, he let out a soft, pleasured moan. He tensed up momentarily, praying to Celestia that his mistress didn't hear him. But when his mistress didn't cease her treatment, he figured that she didn't hear him. But he was dead wrong. "Wow, he's liking this more than I thought he would," Cadence thought deviously from her position. "Time to push him a little harder." With a sly grin, she applied just enough pressure to the base of the toy to push the next bulge inside her slave, making him gasp. "Just one more bulge, and then it'll be all over," she murmured softly as she applied even more pressure to the toy, trying to see it inside him. But it just wouldn't go in any further. A few seconds later, she noticed that Shining was using his rear muscles to clench down on the toy, preventing it from going further. In an effort to entice him to go further, she got up from behind him and bent down until her muzzle was merely inches from his folded ears. Holding the butt plug in place for her magic, she made it start slow in and out movements, slowly but surely stretching its plot holes. "Slave, if you don't take this, then I won't let you fuck me," she whispered sultrily into his ear, making his rock-hard cock twitch at the proposal. "Doesn't that sound like a good reward after all this?" Yes, mistress." Shining groaned through the pleasure of having his newly found erogenous zone stimulated. "At least I'm gonna get some out of all this." "Wait, how can I mount her if I'm tied up like this?" He yearned to ask that question, but knowing that any outburst would result in more punishments, he obediently kept quiet. Seeing him relax, Cadence grabbed the bottle of lube and poured a small amount on the last bulge on the toy, and then she started twisting it every which way, slowly but surely stretching her sub's plot hole. Just as the toy was about to slip inside, she bent down and whispered darkly, "You're all mine." Yes, Mistress Cadence," Shining replied automatically, wincing as Cadence pushed the rest of the toy inside him, its flared base preventing it from going any further. He bit down a moan of pleasure, knowing that speaking or making any sounds out of turn was strictly forbidden. Clenching down on the toy inside him, he felt the bulges pressed up against something inside him, sending small waves of blissful pleasure throughout his body. "Mistress," he groaned, asking for permission to speak. He hoped that he wouldn't be punished for this sudden outburst. "Yes?" Cadence asked in a mild tone, one not of anger, nor one of kindness. "How is this punishment? I hate to admit it, but this actually doesn't feel all that bad," Shining admitted guiltily as he felt Cadence slowly spin the toy inside him, eliciting a soft whimper of pleasure from his lips. Yanking his head back with the leash, Cadence whispered darkly into his ears, "Oh, your punishment hasn't started yet, my slave." Cadence released the leash from her grasp, letting her sub's head return to its previous position. Liking her horn, she grabbed the base of the butt plug in her magical grasp and started to twirl it faster inside him. As the toy slowly massaged his insides, Shining gasped as he felt the toy press up against that special area inside him. Every time one of the toy's bumps grazed that part of him, small waves of pleasure surged through him, making his balls twitch in anticipation of climaxing. "Is my little slave enjoying this?" Cadence asked in a teasing manner as she laid a few soft kisses on the underside of Shining's throbbing stallion hood. "No," Shining fought back another moan. "No, mistress." "Oh, I think you are." Cadence trailed off in an accusing manner. "This toy was specifically designed to stimulate your prostate, slave. Just look at you, quivering from just the slightest twist." My legs are sore from standing like this, mistress," Shining said in half-truth. "Prostate, huh?" He groaned as he felt the ridges on the toy make another pass on his newfound spark of pleasure. "Well, whatever it is, it sure feels good." "I'm sure they are, my slave," Cadence replied, "but every time I make the toy rub against this spot here." Using her magic, she positioned the toy so that the bumps were pressing right against his prostate, and then she angled it downwards, putting even more pressure on that special spot. As she started to make rocking in and out motions, Shining gasped as the largest bolt of pleasure surged through him, making his hind legs buckle and his eyes twitch. "Your legs tremble as if they're going to collapse." "I'm sure they would if they weren't supported by my little bar here." When she grew tired of methodically pumping the toy in and out of him, Cadence said, "Now, slave, I'm going to give you one more chance to redeem yourself. Make me come, and I won't punish you further. Does that sound fair?" Yes, mistress," Shining grunted. He didn't want to say it, but his orgasm was slowly building up. Some new feeling was building up inside him. Even if he had wanted to, there was just no way that he could describe how amazing it felt. Do you want me to stand up, mistress?" "No, you stay right where you are," Cadence said mysteriously as she slowly walked to sit in front of her slave. "But if you come before me, Picking up her whip again, she tapped him lightly but menacingly on the flank as she spoke each word. "You will regret it dearly." She turned around and used her magic to add a little bit of length to Shining's leash, letting his head fall forward a few inches. Perfect. Without wasting another moment, she sat down, letting the tip of her sub's horn penetrate her entrance, making the two of them gasp in pleasure. Gritting her teeth, Cadence pushed herself downwards until the first ridge was inside her. Rocking her hips back and forth, she slowly but surely hilted her sub's horn inside her. As she started rotating the butt plug still inside him, she started a steady but slow up and down motion on his horn. This feels good. Cadence thought as she slowly fucked herself. She really needed this. She had been fighting the urge to play with herself all this time, but she was glad that she waited. Good things come to those who wait, right, slave? Yes, mistress, Shining mumbled, having his mistress ride his horn like that pushed his head down into his outstretched hooves, giving him barely enough room to move his jaw to speak. He could not begin to describe how awesome having his horn ridden felt. In the past, he had only felt her tongue along its length, which was good enough. His mistress's skill with her tongue was second to none, as it pleasured and caressed his second rod, which always left him nearly powerless as the well-practiced mare brought him to the edge of a magical orgasm. Yet this was something else entirely, as the hot, pulsating walls of her tight love canal slid up and down his horn. He couldn't suppress his throaty moan when she gripped his hypersensitive ridges. Her relentless tugging and thrusting soon made him near a much-needed climax. Suddenly, he felt his stallionhood become encased with his mistress's magic. Perplexed, he asked, Mistress? Good little slaves deserve a reward, wouldn't you agree? Cadence moaned softly as she felt her orgasm start to build up inside her. Only a few more minutes, and then I'll come over his pretty little face. Increasing her pace, she felt some of her love juices seep out of her slit, soaking her sub's horn and his mane with it. With a small grin, she used her magic to stimulate every single nerve ending on the tip of Shining's stallionhood. She closed her eyes and started thrusting herself on her sub's horn faster and faster. The need to get off was maddening. As his mistress fucked herself on his horn, more of her love juices leaked down his face right between his eyes, eventually finding its way down to his muzzle. Opening his mouth, Shining started licking his lips, trying to get as much of his mistress's love juices as possible. As he drank what little of the sweet nectar that dripped down his face, its smell overpowered his nose. That, combined with the fact that his wife was dominating him in the most controlling of ways, pushed him dangerously close to the edge. Even though he was trying his hardest not to, not even a minute later, he groaned and bucked his head forcefully into his mistress as he came harder than ever before. Gritting his teeth, he tried to muffle his moans as he came, shooting several spurts of his love seeds all over the spreader bar and the floor beneath it. Oh, he better not have come, Cadence thought as she looked back, seeing a rather large white stain on the floor between Shining's hind legs. Quickly standing up, she bent down and angrily barked into his trembling ears. Did you just come, slave? What gives you the right to come before your mistress? I'm sorry, Mistress Cadence, Shining panted, basking in the afterglow of his orgasm. He didn't care what sort of punishment he would get. That orgasm was to die for. I couldn't help myself. You couldn't help yourself? Cadence asked angrily. You couldn't hold yourself back for just another minute? Shining didn't respond. He really didn't want to answer that question, fearing his mistress's response. Cadence stared down at him angrily, waiting for his reply. When one didn't come, she decided to coax one from him. Grabbing her whip, she laid several stinging welts on both of his flanks, eliciting several painful gasps from the bound unicorn. Bending down once more, Cadence curtly said, Since you apparently can't follow orders, slave, you need further discipline. Shining cringed at that. What could be worse than this? Cadence stood back up and used her magic to push the butt plug as far as she could inside her sub before quickly yanking it out a moment later, eliciting a painful yelp from her dominated unicorn. Tossing the used toy aside, she grabbed the next one, her strap-on. She slid the harness up her legs, squirming a bit as the strap that went in between her flanks teased her slit. She tightened the straps on the toy, making it gently bounce against her stomach. Sitting down, she grabbed the lube and squirted a copious amount of the liquid on her toy, spreading it all over. Squirting just a little bit more on the tip, Cadence set the bottle aside and stood back up. "Slave, since you didn't obey your mistress, you must be punished," Cadence said in a dark tone. "I'm going to undo your bindings, and you must not fall. Once you are released, you are to follow me to the bed. Understood?" "Yes, mistress." "Good." Cadence lit her horn and popped the spreader bar and the latex bag off of her sub, but she left everything else on. She hopped on the bed and laid on her back, letting the strap-on stand straight up towards the ceiling. Watching her sub stood up hesitantly, she ordered, "Now, come to me, my slave." Grinning slyly, she watched as Shining unsurely felt his way over to the bed, and moments later, he climbed onto it. "Stop," Cadence ordered, making her slave stop in place. "Turn around and take 3 steps back." As her sub did just that, she summoned several weighted bags of sand from under their bed and laid them beside her. Positioning her toy just a few inches below Shining's plot hole, she continued, "Alright, slave, this is how it'll work. If you remain standing for 5 minutes, I will not punish you. But with every minute that passes, I'm going to add another 25-pound bag of sand onto you, so that at the end of the 5 minutes, you'll have roughly 125 pounds on your back. If you cannot handle that weight, you'll be punished. Is this understood?" "Yes, mistress," Shining said as he prepared himself for this test of endurance. Relaxing his hind legs, he suddenly gasped in shock when Cadence slung the first of the 5 bags on his leash, pulling his neck back slightly. Due to the weight, his hips dipped down a few inches. As something wide and cold poked at his plot hole, his hips shot back up. His hind legs already starting to tremble, he glanced back through the blindfold and asked, Mistress?" "Yes, my slave?" Cadence asked, teasing her sub's flanks with her whip, stroking his cutie mark with the tip. What was that?" "Oh, it's really nothing important, slave. Let's just say that it's your punishment," Cadence replied confidently as she heaved another one of the bags onto her sub's back, making his hind legs buckle. At the way things were going, she knew that her sub wouldn't be able to last all 5 minutes. And when the strain on his legs would make him collapse, he would fall right on her toy. 2 bags down, 3 more to go. Shining struggled to remain upright. The strain of the weight pulling his head back was almost too much to bear. Trying to balance with your head being held back against your will was extremely difficult to do. Gritting his teeth, he tensed all the muscles in his legs, hoping that doing so would make them stop trembling. But it only made things worse. His muscles burned harder, and they screamed at him to let go, to give up. But he was a fighter. There was no way that he was going to give up. Besides, he was already past the halfway point. With that knowledge in hoof, he grinned, confident that he could beat his mistress's silly little challenge. At that moment, though, his right leg started trembling a lot more. It felt like it was about to collapse. There was no way in Tartarus that he would give up so easily. So in an effort to give his leg even the briefest of relief, he took all of his weight off of it, making his other leg take all of the weight. Cadence tossed another bag of sand on her sub's back just as he regained his footing. "Having a little problem there, slave?" she asked as she rubbed the end of her whip on Shining's flanks, teasing the quivering flesh. She toyed with the idea of whipping his legs just enough to make him fall and penetrate himself on the strap-on, but she decided against it. Besides, it was going to happen eventually. It was just a matter of time. Glancing at the clock hanging on the wall, she saw that another minute had passed. With a grin, she tossed another bag on his back, right on top of the first three. She knew that there was no possible way that Shining could last another minute with the added weight. 4 down, my little slave. 1 more bag and 2 more minutes to go. Shining grunted as the 4th bag forced his hip down a couple inches. His hind legs were starting to kill him, and he knew that they would fail him any second now. Just as he was about to give in, a great idea popped into his head. If I lean forward, that'll distribute the weight more towards the front, and it will take the strain off of my hind legs. This is brilliant! And Caddy thought I couldn't pass her little test. He bent forward, but before the bags could even move, he felt his mistresses whip him again, this time much harder than before. I didn't say you could move, slave, Cadence barked, raising her whip in preparation of another blow. Stand up. Shining complied immediately. If his mistress hit him again, he would collapse for sure. As hard as he tried, he couldn't help but let his hips sink downwards. The strain on his legs and neck was just too much. A couple of seconds later, the tip of the strap-on grazed his entrance teasingly. Just as he was about to clench down in an effort to keep the toy from slipping inside him, Cadence tossed the last remaining bag on his back. The additional weight proved too much for him to handle, and his legs collapsed. He saw a brief flash of white, and he gasped softly as the weight pushed him down the length of the toy, hilting at the bottom mere seconds later. It seems you failed, slave. Now, receive your punishment. Cadence levitated the bags of sands off of her sub's back and placed them beside the bed, throwing him down so that he was laying sideways in her embrace. She grabbed Shining's hips with her 4 hooves and lay down next to him, pressing her chest against his back. And don't forget, you cannot touch yourself under any circumstances, remember? Yes, mistress. Good. Cadence cooed. Pulling her hips back, she thrust forward, making her hips slap against her sub's flank. Wrapping her hooves around her unicorn, she pinned his 4 hooves to his chest and held them tightly. She shifted her hips into a better position and held his hind legs down with one of her own. Starting slowly, she pulled back until the tip of the strap-on was just about to come out, and then she slowly pushed it all the way back inside. Pulling back once more, she pushed it back in with a little more force. As she gradually built up the speed and power of her thrust, she couldn't help but make a soft moan as the straps on her toy pleasured her clit. Quickly settling into a good rhythm, she quickly increased her pace until she was fucking her sub as fast as she could. Lowering her head, she bit down on Shining's ears, tugging it towards her a little painfully, showing that she was the dominant one, the one in charge. That, along with being fucked silly, proved too much for Shining to handle, and he teetered on the edge, ready to unleash his load onto the bed. But just as he was about to fall into another blissful orgasm, he felt his entire stallionhood tingle, obviously his mistress's magical grasp. He grinned, thinking that she was going to help him get off. But as he remained on the edge, he realized that he couldn't come. Mistress, Shining panted heavily. Yes, my slave? Cadence asked as she slowed down, switching to deeper yet slower thrusts so that she could talk. Why can't I come? Yes, that. Cadence replied with a small giggle, unsettling the bound unicorn. I placed a spell on your precious stallionhood that prevents you from doing exactly that. You're under my complete control, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop me. She picked up the pace again until she was thrusting back and forth as fast as before. Yes, mistress, Shining replied, fully submitting himself to the mercy of his mistress. Being dominated by his wife felt fulfilling in a way that he couldn't quite describe. Maybe it was the fact that she was in complete control over him, or maybe it was the fact that she was dominating him, where it used to be the other way round, just not as kinky. Whatever it was though, he didn't mind one bit. He was thoroughly enjoying his newfound pleasure spot that his mistress was massaging with her toy. After a few minutes, Cadence slowed down, deciding that her sub had learned his lesson. After a couple of hard, deep thrusts, she pulled the strap-on out of the sub, making sure that his used hole winked at her briefly as it tried to clamp down on something that wasn't there. Making sure that her spell was still working on her sub's stallionhood, she loosened the strap that kept the strap-on secured to her, and she let the used toy slide down her leg. Tossing it off to the side, she looked back towards the bed and said, "Come, slave." Really, Cadence? More?" Shining asked jokingly. He thought that the thorough rutting he had just received would be the end of her punishing him, but he was wrong, dead wrong. "What was that, slave?" Cadence asked angrily, rounding on her sub. She grabbed her whip and laid several stinging welts all across her sub's flank, leaving them a light pink from her punishment. "Mistress, please! It was an accident, I promise!" Shining begged as he slid off the bed, cautiously feeling his way towards his seething mistress. His leash kept his head held high in an uncomfortable position, and it made walking very awkward. It also didn't help that he couldn't see where he was going. As her unicorn neared her, Cadence growled, "Stop, slave." She grabbed the spreader bar and the latex bag from before and forced her sub back into its previous sitting position. After she had affixed the instrument of bondage to her sub, she tested the tightness of the leash with a hoof. Satisfied, she found the last remaining toy at her disposal for the night, her special double dildo. This toy was specially designed to her specifications, purchased at one of the finest intimacy shops in the area. As Cadence hefted in her hoof, she admired its features. In addition to looking realistic all the way down to the small hole at the tip, it had some weight to it, around 6 pounds to be exact. Each side of the toy had thick veins running down its length, and the medial ring was larger than usual. Still using her magic to deny her sub an orgasm, she levitated the double dildo into the air and squirted a large amount of lube on it, spreading it around evenly. She squirted a little bit more of the slippery liquid onto each end to be sure that it was more than sufficiently lubricated. With a sly grin, she lined the toy up to her sub's slightly quivering plot hole and pressed it against it. As she slowly but surely worked the tip of the toy inside her unicorn, she turned around and backed up, lining the toy up with her own plot hole. Backing up slowly, she gasped as she felt the tip of the toy slip into her back door. She paused for a few moments before she let herself get accustomed to the size of the toy. And then she continued, pushing herself further down the toy. With every push from his mistress, the toy was thrust further inside him, filling and stretching him like nothing else. As the tip of the toy grazed his prostate, he gave a low groan of pleasure, feeling a sudden desire to be completely filled. He pushed his hips back and let another couple of inches slide inside him, surprising his mistress. "Just another few inches," he thought as he pushed himself back with all his might, and moments later he met his mistress at the center of the toy. "How does it feel, slave? How does it feel to be dominated, to be stuffed completely full?" Cadence asked condescendingly. She started gyrating her hips, evoking moans of pleasure from the two of them. Teasing the tip of her sub's cock with her magic, she kept him perfectly balanced on the edge. Good," Shining moaned, his mind lost in the blissful rapture. Each and every thrust pushed the medial ring right up against his prostate, pushing him to untold heights. He wanted to come so badly, but his mistress's magic prevented him from doing so. "Mistress?" "Yes, my little." Cadence's clit grazed the base of her sub's cock as she hilted the toy inside her once more, making her eyes widen as pleasure surged through her body. She pushed back further still, pressing her quivering love bead against her sub's cock. "Yes, slave." "Can I please come? You're driving me crazy." In due time. Cadence moaned as she grinded her clit along the base of her sub's twitching cock. "Oh, fuck, I'm getting close." She pulled herself forward, letting the dildo slide nearly all the way out of her. A second later, she thrust herself back as hard as she could, hilting herself on the toy's midsection. As she fell into a steady rhythm, she felt her orgasm start to build up inside her, and based off of her sub's moans, he was still perched on the edge. A couple minutes passed as she continued to ride her toy, pushing herself to greater and greater heights of euphoria with each thrust. Each time her clit rubbed against her sub's cock, it sent a small burst of pleasure through her. After a couple more thrusts, she hilted the toy all the way inside her and pressed her throbbing love bead as hard as she could against Shining's cock, which was by now soaked from the love juices dripping from her engorged lips. Feeling that she was nearing the point of no return, she started gyrating her hips as fast as she could, eliciting blissful moans from the two of them. Moments later, she was teetering on the edge. Literally anything more would send her into an orgasm. Deciding that it was time, she released her magical grip on her sub's cock and focused it on his horn, pleasuring his length with as much skill and care as she could. As her sub cried out as he came, she sent a hoof back to her slit and rubbed herself vigorously, sending her into her own orgasm. As Shining came, he couldn't help but let loose another moan as his balls continued to send load after load onto the floor, coating the spreader bar and his hind legs white as he rode out his orgasm. Wanting to prolong this orgasm, he kept thrusting away, letting the toy stimulate his prostate more. Little did he know that his action kept his mistress coming as well. Cadence had stopped thrusting as soon as she came, choosing to keep the toy all the way inside her, her front legs buckling under the force of her orgasm. She gasped as blissful waves of pleasure rolled through her body. As her pussy tried to clench down on something that wasn't there, it squirted several bursts of mare cum all over her sub's orgasming cock, soaking it in her sweet love juices. Her wings were twitching uncontrollably. It took all her willpower to keep them down. Several seconds later, Shining's orgasm finally subsided and he collapsed, letting the spreader bar take all of his weight. Panting, he relaxed in the afterglow that quickly followed. Cadence closed her eyes and took several slow, deep breaths as she too enjoyed her own afterglow. As her breathing returned to normal, she unsteadily stepped forward, letting the toy slide out of her. As the tip finally slipped out, she gave a small gasp, and the flared head stretched her a little more as it popped out of her plot hole. As soon as it left her, the toy fell to the ground, pulling the rest of itself out of her sub, making him groan in response. "Mistress, will you forgive my disobedience now?" Shining hopefully asked. Even though he had enjoyed being dominated by Cadence, he wasn't so sure how much more he could take. He hoped that his mistress would undo the spreader bar that secured his hind legs. After all the night's punishment, he was sure they were close to completely giving away. With a sly smile, Cadence slowly walked over to her sub, making each hoof step echo throughout their large bedroom, taking her sweet time. Bending down till her breath tickled the small hairs on the inside of his twitching ear, she darkly whispered, "Oh no, my little slave, we're just getting started." Shining gulped. "Oh, I can't believe I signed up for this." Bright Shield groaned quietly as he stared straight ahead, keeping watch in front of the royal chambers. He had a pretty good idea for what was going on behind the closed doors, and try as he might, he couldn't help but spurt out one of the hardest wing boners of his life. After several seconds of awkward silence, he shot a glance at his fellow officer and saw that he was in a similar position. "Oh, I'm right there with you, buddy," the other guard growled quietly. "You know, wouldn't it be nice if they invited us in there every once in a while?" "Wait, every once in a while?" Bright Shield asked hesitantly as he cocked an eyebrow in confusion. "Surely you don't mean, yeah. Seeing as our new ruler is the Princess of Love, you're going to be hearing them go at it quite often." Shadow Breeze replied with a small chuckle, making his comrade groan in defeat. Allah Akbar! Oh my god. Thank you so much for listening. Holy shit! The story's so bad. Oh my god. If you want like an example of a perfect story that is more quantity than quality, this right here. The phrasing is so awkward. The imagery is so lacking. Just everything. At the 20-minute mark, if it cut off right there, fine. But after that, for 40 minutes, it's just it's mind-numbingly bad. I mean, the writer's lack of vocabulary really hurts. I mean, he repeats the same thing again and again. He can't structure his ideas in a way that is enticing. He doesn't use imagery in any meaningful shape or form. I mean, fucking hell. This is shit. Outright shit out of 10. I can't believe. Oh my god, it's so bad. Anyway, at least it's finished. Thank God, Thank God. I really hope you enjoyed. I mean, if you're gonna request a story, can you request something that's good? Please? Oh, fuck. Until next time. Bye-bye.